Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sandra. It's been a minute since I posted a video. The end of June through almost to my birthday in July, we went on annual family beach vacation, and then I celebrated my birthday, of course, and then I picked up a new client for work. So I have been much busier and my reading time has been much less. So it took me a while to read Golden Sun, but I was so excited to get started. This book has to be the best sequel that I think I've ever read. It's very easy for sequel books to be a dud, especially if it's a part of a trilogy because of middle book syndrome and it being a lot of setup and that kind of thing, like a lot of transition type of stuff happening. This book was such a ride though. I finished reading it last night and I just had to put the book down and I'm pretty much in a book coma now. It leaves you on the cliffhanger of all cliffhangers, so I can't imagine being one of the early readers and having to wait for the next book to see what happens. I mean, the end of this book just shatters you. It's so emotional. It's such a moment of defeat. Where can Darrow possibly go from here? I rated Red Rising 5 stars, so if you're curious to see that video, I'll link it so that you can give that a watch. But I rated Red Rising 5 stars. I thought the writing was superb. I love the world building. I love the medieval fantasy elements and the hint of sci-fi that we got. I just really enjoyed seeing Darrow start from the beginning and his growth from his eyes being opened to this new world of the golds and the society and him growing as a leader and gaining respect from everyone. And then this book, it's such a roller coaster of emotions. It further locked down how much I adored some characters. Characters that were introduced in this book were just unforgettable, but not all of them made it through this book. So I've been telling my friends to read the series now, and the way that I've been describing Red Rising is grimdark space gladiator meets Spartacus. Darrow has so much in common with those heroes and his journey, and then throw in the science fiction elements, the space battles, the technological warfare on the ground. It's so cool. These books have just been chef's kiss. In my Red Rising video, I talked about how I was curious to know more about this sovereign character named Octavia Lune, and we definitely got that answered in this book, and I got more than I bargained for because there's just so much in this book. I mean, I thought Red Rising had a lot of twists. This also had as many twists, just as heavy and big reveals and things that you don't anticipate happening in moments. So that's about all I can say about this book without getting into spoilers. That's your one and only warning. Here I go. Red Rising ended on a high note. It ended with the triumph of Darrow with the Institute and Mount Olympus. This book ends on Darrow's perhaps his darkest hour, ironically at his triumph ceremony, which just becomes a total shit show. Many terrible things happen, and I'm still in shock from it. I'm still processing everything that happened, and I want these books to be turned into a television series so bad because I love the Spartacus series, I love Gladiator, I love that kind of thing, and this has so much of that in a future far off, and it would just make for such delicious television. Just the political intrigue in this and the maneuverings, the power struggle between different classes, and the civil war between the golds happening. In parallel, the civil war happening among the Sons of Ares, because you have this faction of the group that wants to commit very terrorist-like atrocities to be able to further their agenda, whereas the figurehead, Ares himself, is not like that at all. He wants to kind of take down the golds and the society from the inside out. A fundamental difference in how they view accomplishing these goals. So we see this theme of just civil strife going on all sides. We also learn who the big bad is. I was expecting the Jackal to be a snake and for him to be bad, but I didn't expect him to be this bad. So all along, we're kind of worried about this entity, the Sovereign. She murdered her own father to get position. All of this foreshadowing with Mustang telling Darrow to fix his relationship with Roque before it becomes unfixable. And so the beginning of Golden Sun opens up. It is a year after the events of Mount Olympus, 2 years after Sunsvery scooped up Darrow and turned him into a gold. Now he is attending the academy and he's undergoing his final exam there, which is he's being tested as a war commander of like a fleet of ships. So it's him remaining and someone named Karnas, who is the eldest brother to Cassius and Julian, R.I.P. Karnas has this huge agenda against Darrow because of the way that Julian was killed in the passage in the first book. Roque warns Darrow that he feels like this whole spaceship setup is a trap and he's trying to make him be a little more thoughtful and cautious of the situation. But Darrow, he's kind of embraced more of his ego side. Like he's very comfortable with his decisions and he's very impulsive in the decisions that he makes. And so he kind of disregards Roque's warning. It does end up being a trap. They're defeated. Darrow has a huge fall from grace. Because of that, Nero Augustus decides to sell him off to the highest bidder at the upcoming Summit Gala. And that's bad news for Darrow because it's the Augustus name that has been keeping everyone at bay, particularly the Bolognas who would like to exact revenge for what happened to Julian. So it's not a good place. Darrow is beat to a pulp by Karnas and like 6 cousins. He's pissed on, which is very similar to what happened with Cassius in the first book. He's just completely demoralized. You know, the only place you have to go when you're at the very top is rock bottom, and that's where he's at now. So then they go to Luna, to the Citadel, because this is where the Summit Gala is happening. And Roque promises Darrow, he's like, I will spend whatever amount of money it takes to protect you and to keep you safe because you're my friend. And he wants Darrow to trust him to just do that. But Victra shows up, and she's a new character that's been introduced in this, and she's a lot of fun to watch because she's kind of chaotic, but good, I think. Victra kind of persuades him to meet her contact outside of the Citadel, and it turns out to be the Jackal. The Jackal is playing a game where he is wanting power. He wants his father's position, but he's playing like he doesn't. Like he has this huge communications corporation that he wants to run, but he wants to get rid of those close to his father, which is Pliny, kind of the Whispers guy, and Leto, who is his father's favorite, almost like an adopted son, who is a fantastic warrior. So Darrow meets with these people at the bar, figures out that he recognizes someone at the bar that is a member of Ares, and it's Evie, and he discovers that Evie is going to assassinate the Jackal with a bomb. So Darrow, of course, is not having that because he has plans for how he wants to use Jackal. The whole place is blown up. When Darrow comes to, I mean, he saved Jackal, but then he wakes up to Evie and Mickey and Harmony. And they tell him that Dancer, his old mentor, is dead, which is a hit to Darrow. So they give him footage of what Io had been whispering when she died, and it was that she was pregnant and she was telling his sister to hide the cradle. And she thought that Darrow couldn't handle that news. He is just emotional all kinds of ways. That's kind of how he's like, okay, he gets on board with this idea of, I'm going to go to the Summit Gala. It'll be the perfect opportunity to detonate this bomb, and I can just get rid of all of them. At the gala, he tranks Roque because he doesn't want Roque to get harmed in doing this. So he's doing it to save Roque. But at the gala, he jumps up on the table and is looking around the room, and he realizes that this isn't what Ares is about, these terrorist acts, and he decides to go a different route, which is to challenge Cassius to a duel. And he bests him because he's been secretly training with Lorn Arcos. I mean, he shames Cassius. All hell breaks loose because he's able to prove that Octavia is favoring House Bologna and was going to let them just assassinate all of the Augustus family. And so hell breaks loose, houses against houses. Darrow and friends escape. They are met up by Fitchner, who is now a rage knight, and he takes them to go see the Sovereign because now she wants to recruit Darrow for her side. And she makes him take this test with these oracle snakes, and it's a test of telling the truth. And if you lie, you get bit and die, pretty much. Mustang comes in. She's apparently been working with the Sovereign, and she's also been sleeping with the enemy Cassius. She's trying to bring peace between Bologna and Augustus, and so she was trying to play Cassius. That was her kind of strategy for making all this happen. But he is able to get Octavia to lie about she had planned on letting the Bologna kill Augustus in front of Mustang, and so Mustang then is pissed off at Octavia. And so all this stuff happens. But there's so much betrayal in this book. Like Tactus ends up betraying him because he's listening to his family talk about he's just living in Darrow's shadow. When they escape with Octavia's grandson Lysander, who is a Darrow fanboy, he ends up taking Lysander back to the Sovereign. And then Quinn dies in the process, which makes Roque even more depressed. Throughout the book, it's just this very slow progression of all of these moments that Darrow had to repair the relationship that he had with Roque. And then he ends up getting sidetracked or distracted. This rift between the two of them just keeps growing bigger and bigger and bigger. After Darrow passes the Sovereign's little lie test, that they all get put on lockdown pretty much, like house arrest, while Octavia proceeds with having all of House Augustus slaughtered. And this is when we find out that Mustang had summoned Severo and the Howlers from Pluto months ago to come back, and so Severo breaks them out. This is when they take Lysander. Quinn is injured very severely in the process, ends up dying, and then Tactus betrays them all because his family has been really drilling into him about living in Darrow's shadow and not making a name for himself and just making him very insecure and not trustworthy. And so he betrays Darrow, takes Lysander back to the Sovereign. This is when things start progressing much quickly throughout the book. They hatch a plan to take over all of these fleets across the different planets, whether it's Ganymede, Mars, whatever. And then they plan to kidnap all of the kids attending the Institute all over the place so that they can ransom them for funding, garner more support to their side. And so this whole civil war starts. Is during this whole process that Darrow pays a visit to another planet to get Lorn on his side and kind of tricks Lorn, forces him to join his side. This is when Darrow plants the seeds of letting Aja live so that she can trace back to where the Sovereign is, and it all becomes a very manipulative strategic game at the end when they have this big final battle at Mars. We also meet some other characters like Ragnar, who is so interesting. He is an obsidian. He has been raised kind of like in this, seemed like a Norse, like Viking kind of inspired environment, very cold and brutal, and violence is the language. These obsidians are born to be, unfeeling, and all they do is listen to golds. They revere golds as their gods. Ragnar is kind of the leader of this group. We see Darrow be very honest with him and let him know who he is and Sons of Ares and the fact that he's a red, and he kind of gives Ragnar that agency over his own life again. I loved Ragnar. I loved the Telemanuses. It was so great to see Pax's family, his brother and his father. They were really great, as was the cute little fox that Sophocles that rides around on the father's shoulder and eats jelly beans. There were little moments and characters like that, and especially like Victra kind of playing this femme fatale flirtation kind of thing with Darrow the whole time. There were a lot of little moments like that that made the book feel a little more well-rounded, because this book had so many terrible things happening. The end, you just feel so hopeless. You feel completely gutted like Darrow did. And so at the beginning, when Darrow tranked Roque to spare his life at the end, and then the book closes with Roque tranking Darrow, and then Lorn gets murdered, Augustus gets murdered, Victra gets murdered. There's a box, and the whole time I'm filled with a sense of dread because everyone's like, where's Mustang? Have you seen Mustang? Where is Mustang? Haven't seen Mustang. Same thing with Fitchner. I just had it in my mind because you hear the story about what Nero did with the Bologna wife, his first wife that he did, by taking her head, stuffing her mouth with the graves on their wedding night, and sending it back to the Bologna house. And that's why there's such beef between the two of them. And just before this, Nero was having the conversation with Darrow how he wanted him to marry, like he wanted to adopt Darrow as his son because he's so proud of him, like blah. But then he wanted him to marry Mustang. Pierce Brown was definitely building that path and leading us on to believe that we were going to find Mustang's head in this box. And I was just like, please don't let this be true. I thought it would be Lysander's head at one time because I feel like Lysander is going to be a big character at some point. This is very obviously grimdark, and it's like, okay, Lysander's a child. He starts off as this Darrow fanboy. what's gonna happen there? There's so much conversation that Darrow had with Lorn about raising up Lysander and teaching him like these good values and how to live a meaningful life and not just war and killing all the time. And so I feel like Lysander is gonna play a bigger role in the future. And then like the whole conflict of Octavia is not finished yet. But really it was just so many people betrayed Darrow. A part of me is like, if he would have opened up and just included Roque on his plans and stuff, would that have made it any better? Or was it always destined to go this way? I don't know how the Jackal found out about all of these workings with the Sons of Ares and everything. But I mean, he does own a communications company, so part of me wonders if he like had been spying on him all along. So I'm just curious to know how all of that happens. And thank God I don't have to wait for Morningstar to come out because I own it. And I will be reading that soon after I finish some other reading. This book was so good. I also liked how toward the end, before all this major shit happens, that Darrow was like, I'm gonna go back to Mars and go back to Lykos, see how my family is doing. There's a moment he gets very emotional seeing his brother Kieran, because he makes the head of the mine and their city throw them a big feast banquet so they have more food to eat and can celebrate. And he sees his brother and he gets so emotional. And he goes to his mother's house and he's looking around. He sees like his old shoes and how small they are, how small the ceiling, how short the ceilings are, how small the doorways are. His mother has suffered a stroke at some point, but she recognized him. Like she sees in his eyes and just his demeanor that that's still her boy. Like I was getting so emotional watching that scene. And then Darrow's little niece comes down, and the whole time he's visiting with his mom and catching up, he's learning all sorts of things he never knew. Like his mom never really liked Io. She thought that she was had too much fight in her and wanted to fight for a cause all the time, like just didn't like her. He also learns that his uncle and brother-in-law died, fell down a pit viper hole. So I'm like, is he gonna run into them again? Is there hope on the Sons of Ares side? Because I'm so in shock. Like, when you learn on the ship as they're escaping, it's when Darrow was trying to pull his Hail Mary moment and just jumps onto the ship as it's leaving to get to Octavia, and he gets on board with Karnas and all of them and Aja, and Fitchner's just like, what the fuck, like I had this, and basically lets him know that he is Ares. That was such a chills moment. So many things made sense from how you saw Fitchner in the beginning of the book. Even the story that he told about Severo being half red and half gold because Fitchner fell in love with a red woman named Bryn. I came to really adore Fitchner. He was funny. He was always just a really interesting character on screen, and I was just heartbroken when Darrow looked in the box and it was his head. And I'm like, this doesn't look good. So we still have Mustang and Ragnar and Severo unaccounted for. I'm glad that Mustang is not on her brother's side, or it doesn't appear to be on her brother's side. She's still weirdly absent, which does not make any sense for me. Like maybe she's just figuring out that Darrow is a red who is carved into a gold and has just been lying to her this whole time and wanting to take down her family and this whole society that she has been born and bred into. But I was so disappointed with Roque's character. I thought that he cared more about his friendship with Darrow and their experiences together rather than Darrow just being a red through and through and him being a gold. Like, it was really sad to see it devolve back into that. And so I felt for Darrow. I'm just in shock. This was such a good book. The world building was superb, like the space battles, the technology and how it changes the aspects of war. Just visiting the different planets, meeting different, like we met Orion. She's a really interesting character who is now like the ship captain of the Pax. And now that Roque has all of these, like the vast majority of all of these fleets in space, Jackal controls communications, Octavia is on the run, like who knows what's gonna happen. And then of course, the Sons of Ares are heavily, their leader has been destroyed, so they were already struggling with this civil kind of strife between them. So who knows what's going to happen there now. So now I just have so many questions. I will be curious to see how they finish in Morningstar. So, again, 5 stars, loved it just as much as Red Rising. Red Rising is special to me just because I love the dark academia trope, like the war school type of thing. Like, I live for that. I will eat that up every time. I can never get enough of those books. So I love that trope for the first book, but this one was just incredible. It was a 5 star, like, in its own way, and it just built on more. And so, very strong sequel book, and I cannot wait to see how this original trilogy wraps up. If you have read the Red Rising trilogy, did you enjoy this book more than the first book, or the same, or what were some of your favorite parts? If you made it to the end of this video of me just kind of droning on and on about what happened in the book and just what I enjoyed, leave me a box emoji to let me know you made it this far, because, you know, the end of this book. And then definitely subscribe to my channel, like this video if you want to see more content from me, and I plan on doing Morningstar here soon in the near future. Okay, thanks for watching. I will see you soon. Bye.